ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
मध्यमाम्
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां
वन्दे
वन्दे
परम्पराम्
गुरुपरम्पराम्
सहना भवतु
भवतु
सहनौ
वीर्यं
भुनक्तु सह
कर्वावहै
वीर्यं करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
शान्ति
शान्ति
हरि ओम्.
Okay, so we were on the sixth chapter, second section, first mantra. We'll chant it again. So please unmute yourself. Sat eva somya idam agre asit.
सत् एव
तदेव सौम्य
सौम्येदमग्र
अग्रे
आसीत्
आसीत्
Ekameva advitiyam.
एकमेव अद्वितीयम्
Tatha ekahu.
तद्ध
तत्थ
एक
एक आहुः
आहुः
Asat eva idam agre asit.
असदेव
असद् एव
इदमग्र
इदम् अग्रे
आसीत्
आसीत्
Ekameva advitiyam.
एकमेव
एकमेव
अद्वितीयम्
अद्वितीयम्
Tasmat asatah satjayatah.
तस्मात् असतः
तस्मादसतः
सज्जायतः
So we were looking at the various adjectives that they have used, and we said that Shankara said that Sat means Asti iti matra, the substance in its existence form alone. Then we were looking at Sukshmam. Shankara's definition what Sat consists of existence, and that existence is subtle, that is not perceptible by the sense organs, Indriya Gochara. It is free from all the attributes, it's nirvishesham. It is sarvagatam, it is present everywhere, all pervading. It is ekam. So ekam is advitiyam, only one, without a second. Then niranjanam. So it is that which is free from all impurities like raga, dvesha, karma, etc. And nir avayavam, free from parts. So this was the definition given by Shankaracharya to the word sat. Right. And then he carries on. He says it's vijnanam also. So vijnanam is consciousness principle, the self-evident principle. And here it's because unless consciousness is there, we will not be able to perceive or be aware of anything else. So everything in the universe is an object of this vijnanam, this chit. And since it is dependent upon chit for its very recognition, it is mithya only, dependent forever, and is mithya only. So, what is this consciousness? So, there are two words, sat and chit. So, consciousness is, and what is? It's a very nice play on the words. Consciousness is. Only consciousness is. And what is the is? Is that which exists. So, sat. It's a very important idea, you know. Sat is Chit and Chit is Sat. So Shankara starts and says, Sadeva Chit, Chideva Sat. Sat alone is Chit, Chit alone is Sat. They are not two different attributes, they are not two different substances, they are the same substance. And Shankara says, this Sat, this Sat Vastu, this Brahman, this existence principle, is to be understood from all the Vedantic texts, all the Upanishads. And therefore, when you say Sat Asit, Agre Sat Asit, there was Sat alone in the beginning. It means that it was in the potential form, right? So, because there can be a question if Sat alone was there in the beginning, does it mean that it is not Sat now? So, Shankara says, no, that's not correct. Earlier on, in the beginning means the word asit here has to be taken as before the universe was born. So Jagata Pragutpatti, before the universe is born, that's what existed. But in what? In the Karana format, as a Karana. What a Karanam for what? For the universe. Therefore, the potential form of the universe, that was the existing in the original Sat, before the universe was born. Then what is it now? It is the same Sat, but with names and forms. So earlier on it was Sat with potential Namarupa, which is Karana Brahman. And now it is Sat with Namarupa. It is Karya Brahman. So there are two names. One is Karanam, one is Karyam, one is Brahman, one is Srishti. So Brahman as Karanam is Sat. Brahman as Karyam is Srishti. So one with manifest names and forms, one with unmanifest names and forms. Therefore, this original Karanam, it contains all the Nama Rupa in Avyakta Avastha. All the names and forms in the unmanifest potential form is contained in that Karana Brahma. What about Karyam? Karyam contains the same Nama Rupa, but in Vyakta form, in manifest form. Right? It's like, let us say, your uh, roti atta, the batter for the roti, or the batter for the dosa, let us say. Right? So that batter for the dosa contains the original dosa also in the avyakta avastha. So when the dosa is in potential form, it is in unmanifest form, you call it dosa batter, dosa mav, right? But when the dosa is made, you don't call it batter anymore. It becomes dosa. The name has changed to indicate that there is a change in the form also. The name, form has changed from avyakta dosa to vyakta dosa. And therefore, the name has changed from batter to dosha. That is the first point, that there is a avyakta aspect and vyakta aspect. The unmanifest form is there and the manifest form is there in Brahman. The second point is that in the unmanifest form, in the avyakta avastha, there can be no transactions. The nama rupa, the name and form, cannot be put to any use at all, any transactional use at all. Transactions can take place only in manifest form, only in vyakta avastha, which is why when the same substance is in avyakta avastha, it is very easy to overlook the names and forms. Right? If somebody asks you what is there in that vessel, you are unlikely to say potential idli or dosha. How many of us will say it's potential idli or dosha? Very few, right? Most will say what? It is batter alone. So in the avyakta avastha, it is easy to overlook the potential names and forms. If when it becomes manifest, what happens? The batter is not noticed because the names and forms are manifest. So you won't say it is potential dosa now manifest. You will say simply dosa. The potentiality, the batter form is overlooked now. So the in the karana avastha, in the causal form, the substance, the vastu is dominant, the batter. But in the karya avastha, in the product form, the nama rupa is dominant. And it is only the nama rupa that is useful for transactions. Right? Just like the clay cannot be used to store water. Once the clay becomes a pot, the pot is the rupa. The pot substance, the shape of the pot is the rupa. What is the Nama? When Nama Rupa becomes Vyaktaha, then we can use it for transactions. When the Nama Rupa is unmanifest, we don't focus on the Nama Rupa. We focus on the substance only. And that is what Upanishad is saying here. Sateva Asit. Sadeva Asit. Only Brahman was there. But you have to understand that when Upanishad says Sadeva Asit, it means the potential universe was also there. That Sat is nothing but the potential universe only. We don't call it Srishti, creation, because creation has not yet begun. The names and forms are not yet manifest. When the names and forms become manifest, Srishti begins. It is the same Sat. That's why Srishti says, that's why Upanishad says Sadeva. It is that same Sat. What is different is that you are now seeing the names and forms. Therefore, you forget the substance Brahman. Therefore, the rule is Avyakta Nama Rupa Sahitam Sat. Avyakta Nama Rupa Sahitam Sat is what Karanam. The Sat, which is together with unmanifest names and forms, is the Karanam. Vyakta Nama Rupa Sahitam Sat Karyam. That same Sat, which is together with manifest names and forms, is Karyam, the product. And that's why in this particular mantra, the Sadaiva has to be interpreted very, very correctly. It is pure existence only, pure existence principle. But we must remember that potential names and forms are always there. Like in any pure existence, potential names and forms are always there. Once you say that, then there is a question. What should the question be? If I say Sat is always along with Avyakta Nama Rupa, what question should arise in your mind? Question should be that, is this Nama Rupa part of Brahman or is it independent of Brahman? What is the answer?
It's
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 a
not
mithya entity
independent. It's a
dependent on
mithya.
Brahman.
Answer.
Brahmashraya.
The answer is neither. It is not independent of Brahman, nor is it part of Brahman.
Mhm.
It is a
Brahman has no
and
heart.
Brahmashraya Maya.
it is Brahmashra. It is dependent upon Brahman. Therefore, not independent of Brahman. At the same time, it is not part of Brahman because Brahman has no parts. Why do we say so? Because supposing the Nama Rupa has a existence distinct from Brahman, what is the defect?
Duality. It will
Duality.
not be Advaitam.
Dvaitam comes in, right?
Hmm.
The Brahman will therefore not be Advaitic. And if there is a second entity to Brahman, what is the problem with Brahman?
It cannot be infinite.
It cannot be infinite. It will be limited by the other entity, right? So that is the problem of saying that this thing is Maya is different from Brahman. Namarupa is different from Brahman. If you say that different entity will limit Brahman and therefore Brahman will become limited, parichinnam. Okay, so that we reject. What about supposing we say it is non-different from Brahman? It's an integral part of Brahman itself. What is the defect there?
We say that Brahman is partless, niravayava. So how can it be a part of that?
No, that's okay. We say that. But what is the defect if you accept that it is part of Brahman or is an integral part of Brahman? There is a very clear defect. What is that? Okay. How
It means,
does... Yeah, go ahead.
could I say,
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
means that when it becomes Vyakta, it is Brahman who is becoming the Nama and Rupa, which is not so.
So we are saying Nama Rupa is part of Brahman, but it is an avyakta avastha, right? When the
So,
Srishti begins, when the universe is created or born, what happens?
hmm,
That Nama Rupa undergoes modification. And
hmm,
therefore, if the Nama Rupa, which is an integral part of Brahman, undergoes modification, Brahman is also undergoing modification. And therefore, Brahman will be subject to Vikara, which is not
yes.
acceptable to us. So that also has to be. And why so? Why is it that if Brahman is subject to Vikara, what is the big problem?
There is a beginning and there is an end because it will go through the stages of Vikara.
It will go through Shadvikara.
Uh,
And Shadvikara is the cause of samsara. And if Brahman is Shadvikaravat, then if you become Brahman, if you understand Brahman, you are also subject to Vikara. There is no purpose in the study of the scriptures. You don't get moksha at all. So this is the argument we use. And the only acceptable argument then is that Amarupa is there in Brahman, not as a separate, distinct entity, but as a dependent entity. Therefore, Namarupa is Mithya and Brahman is Satyam. This Mithya Vastu is neither different from Brahman, nor is it part of Brahman, nor it is the same as Brahman. It is like a shadow, right? The shadow which you cast on the ground. The shadow is Mithya. How do you know? It is your shadow. You can see it. How do you know it is Mithya?
it's dependent on my being there only, then I mean, body being there only, then the shadow is there. Otherwise, it's not there.
When the light comes, the shadow goes away. When there is light, the shadow is not to be seen.
Can the shadow affect you is the question.
Okay.
No, it cannot.
How do you know? If a car goes over your shadow, you don't start screaming, right?
No.
And therefore, shadow cannot affect you. And therefore, before creation, you have got this Satvastu, Brahman, plus Avyakta, Amarupa in Mithya form. During creation, you have the same Sat, the same Namarupa Mithya, but in manifest form. Before creation, it is unmanifest. After creation or during creation, that unmanifest avyakta avastha changes to vyakta avastha. Now take those words. Ekam eva advitiyam. Ekam, one. Eva, only. Advitiyam, non-dual entity. Ekam eva advitiyam. So, ekam means one. Advitiyam means non-dual, which also means one. Why the repetition? Is it not punar ukti doshaha? So that has to be addressed. So there are three words actually. Ekam, eva, and advitiya. Those three words, what do they address is the question. Otherwise, all the three words can take a meaning the same thing. Eva means only, which can mean ekam, which can mean advitiyam. So these three words are essentially punarukti dosha unless you can explain it away. How do you explain? We say that these three words are used by Shruti to negate three types of differences, three types of divisions or bheda. What are they? Sajatiya bheda,
Vijatiya
Vijatiya bheda,
Swagata.
and Swagata bheda. So let's look at each of them. Sajatiya bheda, Sajatiya, differences within the same species, right? This is negated by the word ek. Means Brahman is ekam. It doesn't have anything of the same species. And therefore, if you have a mango tree, a coconut tree, a jackfruit tree, all these are different differences within the same species of tree. Tree is the species. You have a mango tree, coconut tree, jackfruit tree. This is sajatiya bheda, difference within the same species. Like between humans, you have males and females, right? Therefore, this sajatiya is negated by the use of the word ekam, only one. Then vijatiya bheda, differences between two species. So you have humans and tigers and elephants. When you say advitiyam, it means without a second. And therefore, this vijatiya bheda is eliminated, is negated. And swagata bheda is internal differences, right? For a human being, you can have hands, legs, nose, eyes, ears, different parts with the internal differences. And this is negated by the use of the word eva, only, right? So therefore, these three words, they indicate that Brahman is free of all these three differences. Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Swagata, Bheda Rahita Brahman. Free of all these three differences. Now, if you are talking about the existence of Sat before creation, Agre means before creation. Now, before creation, how do you understand these three differences? There was only pure existence and therefore no other species. Therefore, Sajatya and Vijatya Bheda is ruled out. Right? Also, Brahman itself has no internal divisions, is partless. And therefore, Swagata Veda is also rolled out. That is how these three Vedas are to be understood in Agre. Sad eva Agre Asit. That Sat which existed before creation began. And we should not forget that this is Karana Brahman, which means Sat with unmanifest names and forms. And unmanifest names and forms has got another name. What is that?
Avyakrita.
Avyakrita. It has got another name. Avyakrita Nama Rupa. Avyakrita means unmanifest. So Avyakta Nama Rupa is Avyakrita Nama Rupa. What is the other name for that?
Maya.
Maya. And therefore, when we say that Sad alone was there before creation with Avyakta Namarupa, we simply replace the name Avyakta Namarupa with Maya. And we say before creation, Sat plus Maya was there. What was there before creation?
Brahman.
Sat plus Maya.
Ishvara.
Ishvara alone. Right? Sat is Brahman. Maya is Avyakta Namarupa. So Maya Sahita Brahman is Ishvara alone was there. Now, Shankara says in his commentary that there are some others who say that, and these others are who? The Shunyavadis, the Buddhists. They said that supposing you say, Asad eva idam agre asit. There was only Asat which existed before Srishti. Right? So there are Shunyavadis, Buddhists who say that there was only Asat which existed before creation. Asad eva idam agre asit. They interpret. Right? And here you have to be very careful because when a Buddhist or a Shunyavadi says this asat is not mithya rupa asat, but it is tuchha rupa asat. What is tuchha rupa asat?
Tucharupa
That
Asat
does.
was explained as
Non-existence.
non-existent, like a rabbit's horn.
As total non-existence.
Mm.
Shunyam. Right? And therefore, you have to remember that this is not the teaching. The Shunyavadi will say this, but this is not the teaching. So, Ekam Eva Advitiyam for us is not pure non-existent without anything else. And therefore, you cannot say that. There's one very important reason. If you accept the Buddhist argument that there was nothing before, and then that they are saying that asat basically means shunyam, nothing before. Then the part of the Shruti mantra which says tasmat asataha sat jayataha, that becomes meaningless because you are saying that therefore from that non-existence this universe has come. Tasmat asataha sat jayataha. If you accept the Buddhist interpretation of asat as tuchaha, then you are saying something comes from nothing, which is not acceptable logically also, right? And therefore asata has to be accepted as with names and forms. So sat asataha here is mithya rupa asataha together with Brahman. Okay. So this is the view that yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rabiji, then in that case, is Shunya means we can also interpret as a Purnam.
No, this is the Buddhist view. Shunyam is cannot be interpreted as Purna. Shunyam literally means empty. Purnam means complete. Two opposite things. And that is, there is a tendency among modern writers who are got a bit of Buddhist influence to talk about Purnam and Shunyam interchangeably. That is not correct. Because if you look at the words themselves, they mean completely different things. Therefore, asataha is mithya rupa asataha. If you take it as shunyam, the problem is this. You are going to say that from nothingness, something has come. Which means if that is possible, then you should have butter from what? Water or nothing. Something should give nothing. That is not correct. So this is the view of some people. And this is dealt with in the next verse. So we will chant the
So
next mantra.
before we proceed to the next verse, I have one more question. I don't know how relevant it is this to this particular sloka that we had learned. You said that the transaction can take place only with Vyakta form.
Yeah.
Now, we hear so many things about plain chat. There are people who talk to the Atma of those who have passed away. So how do you explain that phenomenon in that context?
We don't explain. Because you cannot say, see, that I am talking to my father's ghost. Right? At the most, it's a delusion. There's one good reason for this also. First of all, you don't know in which state of travel the Jivatma is, right? Whether he is already we saw earlier in Panchagni Vidya. At what point is it? And remember in Panchagni Vidya we said that once the physical body is given up, until the next physical body comes, that Jivatma is not capable of any transaction at all. We said that because between the two bodies, transactions are not possible. Between the time frame, the two bodies. Once the second body comes, you can transact.
Okay.
So all this is meant for, satisfaction, consolation, etc. But Shastra doesn't really look at that at all.
Okay.
The only place where you can say that you can talk to something which is not another body is when the Lord takes some form for you. Even then, the Lord takes on a form for you, right? And that form itself is a physical body. Then only you can talk to the Lord.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So we will now go to the second mantra. Katastu khalu somya evam
Katastu
कथं
khalu
खलु
saumya
सौम्य
evam
एवं
syaditi hovacha katham
स्यादिति
Yaditi
avidhi
होवाच
hovacha
hovacha
katham
कथम्
katham
asat asat sajjayateti
sat
tat
सत्
sat
asat
sajjayati
sajjayateti
सज्जायते
satveva somya idam agre asit.
तत्स
तत्त्वेव
एव सौम्य
सौम्य
इदमग्र
idamagra
आसीत्
आसीत्
asiti
Ekameva advitiyam.
एकमेव
ekmeva
एकमेव
advitiyam
अद्वितीयम्
अद्वितीयम्
So somya iti hovacha. So we have said katha kutaha tu khalu evam syat iti. How is this possible? Kutaha tu, but kutaha khalu evam syat. How is this indeed possible? How is what possible? So katham asataha sat jayate iti. So he's repeating the view which we talked about in the previous mantra, the Buddhist view. So Rami has not understood. So he's repeating it as if a Buddhist is saying, Katham asataha sat jayate iti. How can this existing universe be born from asat, non-existence? Because nothing can come from non-existent. Right? Itself, anubhava pramanam also. We know anything that is born has to be existing in potential form. So put it another way, how can the birth of a non-existent universe take place? And we saw this in Bhagavad Gita, where very famous verse.
अव्यक्तादीनि
Nasato vidyate bhavaha.
16.
16th
Right.
verse, second chapter.
That very famous verse. Then, therefore, what is the pramanam to validate a statement that an existing world can be born from a non-existent one? Because that you have to now handle logically. So, supposing the world was existing already, right? Then it need not be born, right? Now, therefore, if it was non-existing, then how can anything existing come out of that non-existence? There are two questions. If it was non-existing, how can anything existing come out of non-existence? So you can take the example of churning the uh, curds to get butter. Why do you churn only curds to get butter? Why don't you churn water?
Because the butter exists in the unmanifest form in the
Because the
curds.
butter exists in Avyakta Nama Rupa and curds, and therefore you churn only curds. There is no Avyakta butter in water. So if you churn water, you'll get nothing. The general rule, therefore, is that you can produce something only if that something already exists in the source, but in potential form. Right? Even grammatically, if you look at grammar, when I say something is born from something, right? There are two somethings over there. Something two is born from something one. What is the subject of the verb born? That's a pretty, the second fifth standard question. Why something two is born from something one? What is the subject of the verb born?
Subject one.
Subject one. Now, is it possible for a verb to be used without a subject or a non-existent subject? So grammatically also, when you say something is born from something, it is an existing something which is the subject, and an existing something which is the object. Therefore, by saying that katham asata sat jayate iti, you can never interpret that asat as tuchha asat, non-existent karana. And therefore, the conclusion he gives here, sateva somya agre asit ekam eva advitiyam. Sateva, sad alone is existing. In one interpretation, you have to say that before the universe is born, the same universe existed with names and forms in potential form. After the universe is born, that same universe exists, but with manifest names and forms. Therefore, a very important idea is being conveyed that Ishvara never creates anything. No jiva was ever created. No universe was ever created. And if that is so, because you are saying what? Universe is already there in potential form. Jiva is already there in potential form. What then is the purpose of the creation? Do you see the contradiction? If you say Ishvara created something, and you are also saying that there was no Jiva ever created because it's there in potential form. There is no Ishvara, there is no Jagat ever created because it is there in potential form. There is a contradiction. And therefore, we should never ask what is the purpose of creation. It is the very nature of creation of matter. Sorry, not creation. It is the very nature of matter, of Maya, to move from unmanifest to manifest and manifest to unmanifest. This is the very system, the way it works. And Krishna said this very beautifully once, where
अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत.
अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत avyakta nidhanani eva tatvaka paridevana. What is the purpose of worrying about all this? That is the way nature is. And therefore, ekam eva advitiyam, the phrase we saw, it is meant to negate the three types of division. Sajatiya, vijatiya, swagataha. Right? And therefore, the Sat Brahman, is free from all these differences. And therefore, he says, Somya, oh dear one, Sadeva idam agre asit. The Sadbrahman alone was present before Srishti began. But we have to add this Sadbrahman alone with unmanifest names and forms, along with Maya, was present before Srishti began, along with Avyakta Maya, Avyakta Nama. Now we'll go to mantra number 3. Please unmute yourself. We will chant. Tad aikshata bahusyam prajaye iti.
तदैक्षत
तदैक्षतपुंस्यां प्रजायेति
तत्तेजः असजत तत्तेजः ऐक्षत.
तत्तेजः सृजत तत्तेजः
बहुस्यां प्रजाये इति.
बहुस्यां प्रजायेति
तत् आपः असृजत.
तदापः सृजत
तस्माद्यत्र कश्च शोचति.
तस्माद्यत्र कश्च शोचति
स्वेदिति वा पुरुषस्तेजसः.
Vedate va purushasya
तेजस एव तत् अधि आपः जायन्ते
tejasa
तेजस
eva
एव
tatra
तदपः जायन्ते
So here you are about to see something completely different. This mantra talks about Brahman wanting to create the universe, visualizing the creation of the universe. Right. So before creation, Ishvara is visualizing the creation. Tad Aikshata. So Tad here is not Tad Brahma, Tad pure Brahma. Tad here is Tad Ishvara, Maya Sahita Brahman. Why? Because we said Sadeva Agre Asi. Only that Sad was existing before. But what Sad was that? That was Maya Sahita Sat. Very important idea. That pure Brahman doesn't exist at all. Pure Brahman without Maya doesn't exist at all. Maya is also Anadi. Brahman is also Anadi. At all points of time, Brahman and Maya exist together. One is Mithya, one is Satyam. Right? So Tat Aikshataha, that Maya Sahita Brahman, that Ishvara Aikshataha, from the verb Iksha, to see. He visualized. He was thinking, what should I do? Like it's very much like me, I get up in the morning and then I'm retired, right? So what to do? On a Saturday, Sunday, it's pretty clear. I've got to give class. On other days, what to do in the morning? So that same thing. Ishwara, I had no job. So he said, what should I do? Then he said, Bahusyam prajayeya iti. So let me become Bahu, many. Right? Let me become many. So you should remember that this is Ishvara, Lord Brahmaji now. Okay, because he's the creator. And his night and his day is how many Chaturyugas? 2000 Chaturyugas. Remember all
oh,
this. Okay.
yeah.
The life of Srishti itself. And so the first thing he wants to do is to create the Srishti, is to create the universe. When he gets up in the morning, we're talking about Brahmaji getting up in the morning, right? So Ishvara getting up in the morning, which means his pralayam is over. He has now finished sleeping and he has got up. So he wants to create the Srishti. Now, why does he want to create Srishti? Because he is Purnam. He doesn't need anything. So what is the reason? The reason is because there are jivas in avyakta avastha, in that maya, right? And now those jivas have got unexhausted karma. And therefore, they need to exhaust the karma. To exhaust karma, you need physical bodies. For the physical bodies to go through pleasure and pain, you need the universe. And therefore, Lord Brahmaji has two jobs. First is to create the universe, then is to create the jivas in accordance with their karma. Remember, those jivas are right now in avyakta avastha, right? Okay. So, Ishvara then looked around and saw that there were millions and infinite number of jivas with infinite number of karmas. And therefore, he decided that he had to create the universe. Pausyam prajaye iti. Right? And before the jivas were created, he had to create the universe. So 14 lokas were also there in that Maya in potential form. So he created all the 14 lokas also. Right? Now, he looked at all the jivas and of course he knew the Sanchita karma for each jiva. And therefore remember that he would be creating only those jivas whose Sanchita karma had become ripe for fruition. Right? All jivas, maybe there are some whose karma was not yet ripe. So they will be left as they are in avyakta avastha only, in unmanifest form. The others will be created. So prajayeya. Prajayeya means to be born. Yes. So he says, let me be born in the form of many jivas. Very important statement. Let me be born in the form of many jivas. And akshata here is the visualization. We also refer to it as Ishvara Sankalpa, the resolution that I will create the universe and the jivas. So Aikshata is the nimitta karanam, the efficient cause. And Bahusyam prajaye iti is the upadana karanam, the material cause. Remember, you can, before creation, there is only Ishvara. And therefore, Maya, being a dependent entity, cannot stand separate. Therefore, Ishvara says, Bahusyam prajaya iti. Let me be many. Remember that Ishvara is a combination of Brahman plus Maya. When he says, let me be many, you should not interpret as Brahman also becomes many. It is Maya alone which multiplies. And this is called Parinami Upadana Karanam. Brahman, you can say Brahman multiplies, but you will have to use a figurative expression. Brahman enables Maya to multiply, and therefore Brahman also can be taken as a Karanam. But since it is Maya which is multiplying, Maya is the Parinami Upadana Karanam. And we can say Brahman is also Upadana Karanam. But you have to add one adjective. Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Parinami means changing. Vivarta here means unchanging. Therefore, in that Ishvara, there are two karanams. One is Maya, the changing Upadana Karanam. One is Brahman, the non-changing Upadana Karanam. Vivarta Upadana Karanam. And how does the multiplication take place? Brahman doesn't need to go and get some chisel and hammer. It is purely by sankalpa, by mental resolution only. So, kevala sankalpa matrena. Creation is manifested. Okay. So, let us go back to Tattva Bodha. What are the stages of creation? From that Ishvara, from that Parinami Upadana Karanam, together with Vivarta Upadana Karanam, what comes first? Tanmatras. The
Akasha.
five Tanmatras, the
Yeah.
five Sukshma elements
Exactly.
come. Right. Then from the five Sukshma elements, we'll not go into the individual elements. You have the Bhautikas, Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Prana, mind, and the subtle body. Then comes the Sthula elements through the process of Panchikaranam. And that becomes Sthula Bhautikam, the visible universe, including the bodies. This is the process that we learned in Tattva Bodha. Now, here in this Upanishad, remember that the five elements are not talked about. You shouldn't get confused. There are only three elements talked about. So, Akasha and Vayu are not mentioned here. Okay, only other three are mentioned. Therefore, whenever we are studying this Srishti Prakriya in Chandogya, you have to mentally supply Akasha and Vayu. And since the three are there, then Akasha and Vayu should be included in one of them, in which whenever you say Agni, remember it is Agni inclusive of Akasha and Vayu. What is the logic for saying that? All very, very simple banana questions that you should remember.
Because without space uh, and the wind, uh, Agni cannot exist.
Well, that's a very general explanation. But anybody else before I give the answer?
Agni has the gunas of Akash and Vayu.
Why?
Rupa. Agni
No,
is
why? Why
the
does it? Why does it have? You have to come to the logic.
Because it has to have its own Vishesha guna as well as the Samanya guna of the
other.
Why?
the ones which were
So in Panchikaranam, that is what?
guna.
Yeah.
No, this is before Panchakarma.
Remember that
Okay.
Akasha is Karanam for Vayu. And Vayu is Karanam for Agni. And therefore, whatever is the guna of Akasha will be there in Vayu because of the Karana Karya relationship. And since Vayu is also the Karanam for Agni, the gunas of Akasha and Vayu will be present in Agni simply because of the cause-effect relationship. Okay, that is why it is okay to include Akasha and Vayu in Agni. So then you should ask, what is really true? You know, one Upanishad says five, another Upanishad says three. What is the problem? Why isn't Upanishad consistent? Shankara says that the Tatparyam of the Upanishad, the essence of the Upanishad, the main objective of the Upanishad is not to explain Srishti at all. It is to talk about Brahman, Sat. And therefore, these three elements are there as a sample. You want to take five elements. It doesn't take away from the arguments. Right? Again, what is not mentioned here is one more thing. The Ishvara pervades this Agni Tattva. Why? Because Agni is Jadam. And we are going to say that Ishvara is operating through this Agni. Therefore, you have to take conscious Agni. The conscious Agni can be taken only if Ishvara is pervading that Agni. Right? And therefore, Tat Tejoho Asrajataha. Tat Tejaha. That breakup is important. Tat Tejaha Asrajataha. Tat is what? Tat is the Ishvara. Tejaha is Agni. Asrajataha means created. So that Ishvara created Agni here. Okay. Asrajata is a verb. Tejaha is the object. Agni is the object of the verb created. Asrajataha. Then Tat Tejaha, here is why we say it's conscious. Tat Tejaha Aikshataha Vahusyam Prajaye Yati. Then that Agni, now here because he's saying Aikshataha, visualized. That Agni visualized Bahusyam Prajaye iti and decided to become many. Okay. Remember, this same argument can be extended to Akasha and Vayu also. If you decide that you want all the five elements, you can just put in two extra words. First, Akasha decided to become there many. Then Vayu decided to become many. Now it is Agni deciding to become many. Right? And because you are saying Agni decided to become many, that decision, visualization, has to be by a conscious entity. Therefore, it is Agni Devataya and not Agni Panchamahatma. And that is why you say that Ishvara is operating through Agni Devata, and therefore Agni Devata is a conscious entity, and therefore Ishvara has pervaded that Agni Devata. Okay. So remember that in every Upanishad, it will be said that Brahman created the first element and all other things came from there. Right? Shankara in his commentary adds that this Brahman here has identified himself with Agni Devata, Agni, and become Agni Devata. Therefore, it is okay to say that Agni Devata visualized. Am I making sense? When you say Tejaha Ekshataha, it is not the Panchamahabhuta Agni which is visualizing. It is Agni Devata which is visualizing. And the same wordings you will see elsewhere. Tad Apaha Asudvaha. Right? Tad. In this Tat Apaha Asudvaha, what is Tat?
Um,
What is Tat over here? Tat Apaha Asudvaha. That. Who is that?
Ishvara.
no,
That
Agni.
This is exactly. This is Agni Devata. Of course, Ishwara having provided by Ishwara, right? That Agni Devata Apa Asaldaha. That Agni Devata created water, Jalatattvam, right? Remember, Apaha is Bahuvachanam, plural. And therefore, you should use the word waters if you're using English, not water. Well, of course, waters is not different from water in many ways. Because plural of waters is water is waters, but you know what I mean, right? It is multiple. Therefore, tat apaha asataha. That Agni Devata created the waters, Jalatattva, right? Now, remember that all this creation is Thula or Sukshma.
Sukshma.
First, Sukshma is born,
Yeah.
and therefore here you have to remember that it is Sukshma Agni and Sukshma Apaha, Sukshma Jalam. You have to prefix that mentally, right? Then there is a question. What is that? How can Agni create water? Because water is what is used to quench Agni, right? And therefore, here you will see that Shruti has anticipated that question. And Shruti says, Tasmad Yatra Kwa Chashochati. When a person is in sorrow, right? The mental fever. What happens if you have a lot of sorrow? What happens? You start to cry. Svedeti Vapurushaha. That person begins to cry. Right? Of course, you can also say that when a person is hot in summer, he begins to sweat. This is explanation. From that heat or fire, water can be born. Very ingenious explanation. So with this, we'll stop for today. Any questions?
Om
Sir,
sir.
why do we?
Sorry.
We'll have to listen to it several times.
Yeah, this.
Yeah, I mean, this is the, what you call, it's no longer Karmakanda. So this question is not given here. It has to be anticipated. That when you say from Agni, Apaha, water is born, question would be normally how can water be born from Agni? Because water quenches Agni, right? And therefore, Shruti says that if you are in a lot of sorrow, you are heated up, right? Your body is heated up, you've got mental fever, Jwaraha, they call it. So even then, you cry. Therefore, water is possible from heat. Alternatively, in summer, if you're walking in Delhi heat, you are sweating profusely. So there is heat, but perspiration is there. Svedana. That word Svedana is perspiration. And the from the hot, from the heat, water can come. Therefore, from that heat, water can be born. Tad apaha adijayate. From that heat, water can be born.
Raviji,
Oh,
Anusha,
Yeah.
isn't that
Yes.
a rather Anusha, isn't that a rather superficial and sort of allegorical explanation? Because we're just talking about the human condition, but here we're talking about the universal condition. Surely I must have a deeper implication or deeper meaning or explanation.
It's right there in the Shruti itself. It's not even an explanation. It is part of
Hmm.
the mantra itself. So we take it as the explanation.
But
This is not
it
even,
defies it.
it defies.
It defies our intellect. We're talking about the human condition there, and how do we apply that to Ishvara's condition?
So we don't use the intellect too much when Shruti says something directly. So
Hmm.
Shruti is the one who has said that the five elements come in a particular order.
Right.
And this is the same order. From Agni comes water, from water comes fire.
Does Shankaracharya give any elaboration on this?
I can look, but I don't think so because most people will accept it as it is. But it's a good question. Let me look at Shankaracharya's commentary on this. But he may not because directly here it says so. No? The mantra itself says that. But
Sorry, yeah.
yeah, tell me. I'll just look at one thing. I look at Shankaracharya's commentary and probably some other commentators. And if I find something, I'll come back to you all of this.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Om sir, can that cosmic cycle explanation work for this? That from Agni,
This is exactly what Nataraj is asking. So that is the
yeah,
answer.
yeah,
That
the
is the
one we
answer.
studied in the Gita, Parjanyat, how the whole
No.
evaporation and then water, can we use that? Will that work?
At the Samashti level, yes, because it is heat
Ah,
which causes the water to evaporate.
correct. That's
But,
what I
but
meant.
we'll have to see what the commentators say.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for
Okay,
your
thank you, sir.
patience. With this, we'll stop for today. Om
Om
Purnamadav
Purnamada
Purnamidam
Purnamidam
Purnat
Purnat
Purnamudachyate
Purnamudachyate
Purnasya
Purnasya
Purnamadaya
Purnamadaya
Purnameva Vashishyate
Purnamevavashishyate
Om
Om
Shanti
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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah
Om
Shivaya.
Namah
Thank you for your
Shivaya. Thank you.
patience.
Thank you so
Namo.
much.
Thank you.